Oh, it wasn't a good weekend for me or Preston North End, but we are here to go ahead and reflect on all the matches that took place over the course of this weekend, and we also have a couple of matches that are taking place in midweek as well, which we will be predicting in the second half of today's video. A lot of derbies going on this weekend. As always, want to get your input on these in the comments down below, and without any further ado, let's get into this. And we'll start out where it hurts. Blackpool 4, Preston 2. I was in the away end for this one, and it wasn't a pleasant experience, putting this one lightly. It was a bit of a weird game, to be honest with you, because Blackpool obviously took the lead. Another disappointing goal for us to concede from a set-piece situation, the second phase of a set play. Alvaro just losing his man, and then Jerry Yates having that free header. But from that point onwards, I thought we reacted really quite well, actually. We were getting on top. We quietened down the Blackpool atmosphere. You could tell there were a few nerves in that home crowd. And when we did get back into things, Emil Rees winning that penalty and Whiteman sticking it away, it was North End who were in the ascendancy for this one. Once again, though, our final ball and final product from open play just wasn't good enough, and I'll come back to that towards the end of this reflection here. But scoring from open play has been a massive issue for us this season. Blackpool's second goal does somewhat come against the run of play, but it is a really good strike, to be fair, from Patino, who obviously is a player who has that quality to go ahead and do that. And from that point onwards, we sort of lost our heads. Now, the game-defining moment did come when Greg Cunningham came off, and while I do think that Lowe was limited on options with what he could have done when that went ahead and happened, because he didn't have a Patrick Bauer on the bench or an Andy Hughes. He wanted to go like for like and brought Bambo Diaby on, but on reflection, I just feel as if that was a massive mistake, and that was the moment for Lowe to have a bit of tactical nous, change things in game when we were actually on top, maybe switch to a back four, keep Lindsay in the middle with Story, push another midfielder on, someone like an Alan Brown, to go ahead and try and make our dominance count. But in the end, Bambo came on, and I think it just completely disrupted the flow we have, particularly in that back line. You know, it pushed Lindsay out to left centre half when he was doing really well with containing Gary Medine up until that point in the middle, and we were just a mess at the back from that point onwards. We lost our cohesion through midfield and going forward as well, and you could just see the confidence just starting to really shrink within us. And then we made a few other changes towards the end of that half, but it was just a case of, I think, Lowe throwing everyone on and seeing what sort of stuck for us, really. None of the substitutes, I thought, had the desired effect when they came on, and obviously we go and, you know, in trying to get that equaliser, send Woodman up, and Blackpool get their fourth goal. So credit to Blackpool, they were the more clinical side. It's been a story of our season so far, and Blackpool's, I suppose, but they are much more ruthless in the final third, and they have that nous within them in the final third to go ahead and kill games off, which we can't do. In terms of the open play problem that we have, it is bleedingly obvious what we are lacking at the moment. I worked this out after the match, but as things stand, North End are averaging a goal scored from open play every 255 minutes, which, if projected over an entire season, we're currently on course to sort of score 16 goals from open play across this entire season, which, to my knowledge, would be a new championship record. It's a difficult one to judge. I think with everything going on at North End at the moment, who's to blame? A lot of people pointing fingers at different places. I think where I stand on this currently is, I think what rules above everything was the summer recruitment ultimately has led us into this situation. You know, to have not brought in another forward and another right wing back as a bare minimum has gone ahead and sold Ryan Lowe really short. However, I am also of the opinion that this squad right now, for me personally, is a hell of a lot better than one open play goal every 255 minutes. And that, for me, is a tactical issue that Lowe has to come up with some sort of solution for. And for me, he has to be a little bit more tactically adaptable in these sort of matches, particularly when you get an injury to someone like a Greg Cunningham. So, yeah, fair play to Blackpool. I've rambled a little bit, but yeah, it wasn't a pleasant afternoon for me, let's just put it like that. After that, to Ewood Park 4, Blackburn 2, Birmingham 1. Speaking of teams being clinical, Blackburn were exactly that in this game. 2 goals from 3 shots on target in this one. Sam Gallagher with the opener and then Wharton with the second. Now, it certainly wasn't from the lack of trying from a Birmingham perspective. I actually thought they put in a decent performance here for their money. 17 shots, 6 on target in the end, but the player who stood in their way time and time again was Thomas Kaminski, who came up with an absolute world worldly of a performance, one of the best goalkeeping performances I think we've seen in the Championship up until this point. Eventually Scott Hogan did get past him in the 80th minute, but ultimately Birmingham couldn't go on and find that equaliser. The result leaves Blackburn second in the Championship, and in usual circumstances I think I probably would be going along the lines of, to Blackburn fans, don't be getting carried away or anything like that. I mean, it's mental. They've lost 7 matches and they're second in the Championship, but this season just has the feeling of unpredictability, whereby absolutely anything could happen in and around the top half of the table. So in terms of a playoff challenge and even automatic challenge, I don't think anything's ruled out for any of those sides that are currently up and amongst the top of the Championship at the moment, because of the unpredictable nature of the league this year and how we've not quite had that 1 or 2 outstanding teams really show their faces so far. After that, to Middlesbrough up against Huddersfield, these two sides playing out a goalless draw. Not the best game going on in the Championship this weekend in terms of an overall spectacle, and probably not the best result given the situation each side currently finds themselves in, but a clean sheet is something to boast from this game, I suppose, and go ahead and take that into their next matchup. But you could tell it was quite evident that a lack of cutting edge in the final third was apparent in this one. Both Borough and Huddersfield did threaten from a few set piece scenarios, but from open play didn't seem like either side had all too much about them in this one. I am very interested to see what Middlesbrough look like when they rock up to Deepdale at the weekend. I'll obviously get to see them in the flesh for that one, because on their showing so far this season, it's not like they've blown anyone away so far. After that, to the Den for Millwall 2, West Brom 1. Great result for Millwall here, turning things around with a last-minute winner. And you can never write off Millwall at the Den, can you? They always just seem to have that comeback ability, especially when they are within their home surroundings. It was a good start for West Brom. The former Millwall man, Jed Wallace, teeing up John Swift for the opening goal after 20 minutes, but Millwall got back into it. Second phase of a set play with Callum Stiles turning the ball in for 1-1 at half-time. Bit of a game-defining moment coming late on, as it seemed to be playing out as a draw, where Kyle Bartley's holding on to a Phobe, gets a second yellow card for that, and that gives Millwall the impetus to go on and win this game with the last-minute winner. Bit of a mess in terms of the West Brom defending for that goal, but I think that could be applied to quite a few of the goals West Brom have conceded so far this season, actually. But all in all, a good win there for Millwall to go ahead and move them up the league. In terms of West Brom, as of recording, does seem as if Carlos Corberán is the man for them in terms of who will be taking over in their current situation, and given they're 23rd in the Championship at the moment, they need to get this appointment spot on. I do like the idea, to be fair, of Corberán being back in the Championship, given everything he achieved with Huddersfield last season especially. I do still think, despite all the shortcomings within this West Brom squad, there are players here that can be moulded into something under the right instructions. I really do. Next then, to QPR 2, Wigan 1. QPR just find a way to win at the moment, don't they? They're top of the Championship as things stand, with a game in hand on Blackburn, who are right behind them as well. And yeah, an interesting game really. 2 first half goals from Field and Balogun, Broadhead with the Wigan goal. And at 2-1, QPR were probably decent value for money for that lead at half time, but second half was quite the flip of the script, and I think that in the end Wigan were really quite unfortunate not to come away with anything from this game. It was a real battling performance from them in the second half, but to be fair to QPR, their back line stood firm. McGuinness almost scored an absolutely outrageous bicycle kick, but that one came off the bar, and in the end Wigan didn't have anything to show for all of their second half efforts. So unfortunate for Wigan. They've been decent value for money on the road so far this season, and on another occasion I think would have got something from this game. But from QPR's perspective, like I was saying with Blackburn before, to have that ability to win in these tight matches, because I think the Championship's so close in terms of quality this season, and it really is a big thing in your favour if you have those couple of game changers in your side, and at the moment QPR seem to have that. Next then, to Reading 2, Bristol City 0. I must admit, coming into this game I was starting to have my doubts over Reading. 3 consecutive losses leading into this one, but they needed a game like this to go ahead and change around their fortunes, and in the end I think you have to say we're well worth the 3 points in this one. Opening goal coming in the second half from a set piece and then Andy Carroll going ahead and wrapping this one up in the 93rd minute. From a Bristol City perspective, a really disappointing performance given how lacklustre, I suppose, Reading and how leaky they actually looked at the back recently. I thought that of all teams in the Championship, Bristol City would have had that quality to have gone ahead and at least asked some questions of that Reading back line, which had been quite vulnerable recently, but that just wasn't the case throughout this one. Reading were pretty comfortable. Bristol City actually finished this game without a shot on target, which really speaks to the lack of quality from their point of view in this game. Usually even at their worst, Bristol City offer up a goal threat, but wasn't the case in this one. And Bristol City fans, what's your take on Nigel Pearson at the moment? Interested to get some views on that. Next then to Rotherham 2, Hull City 4. Now, I had my doubts over Hull coming into this game and whether they could build on the momentum and the performance which they showed in midweek against Blackpool, just because of how up and down they've been during this season so far. But credit where credit's due, followed it up with another absolutely excellent attacking performance in this one. They scored 4 goals in the end, but could have had more going off the stats. 19 shots, 13 of them on target for Hull. Rotherham had left themselves a little bit exposed, which, we've seen it work for and against them over their last 2 matches, really. They conceded 12 shots on target against them in that game against Stoke away, but managed to walk away with the clean sheet. And obviously this is the sort of flip side of that, but 25 shots conceded on your goal over 2 matches is a little bit maybe of cause for concern. There were a few sloppy goals that were scored in this one, but we knew coming into this season that Hull had quality in the final third. It was just about unlocking that and turning that individual quality into a cohesive team. And I think that over these last couple of matches, we have seen that from Hull, to be fair to them. And after that, we had Sheffield United playing out quite a dramatic 2-2 draw with Norwich in the end. A horrendous start for Sheff United in this one, but Norwich took full advantage and looked good value for the money over the first 20 or so minutes. Teemu Pukki chasing down the goalkeeper for the first one, adds a second then after 16 minutes. Sheffield United did influence things more in the second half though, and credit where credit's due, they did change things in terms of personnel, and those substitutes obviously had the desired effect in the end. But the game management from Norwich was really poor in that second half to allow Sheffield United to sort of get back on top in the manner of which they did. Osborne and McBurney with the goals, and then Norwich were obviously presented with that golden opportunity to go ahead and take the lead again from the penalty spot, but Teemu Pukki couldn't convert for his hat-trick. And I seem to remember Norwich of years gone by just having a really poor record from the penalty spot. I remember especially the years under Farker in the Championship where Norwich just would miss an obscene amount of penalties, and that seems to have been a bit of a long-standing issue with this team. But by the end of it, I think Sheffield United were quite unlucky not to have not won this one, to be honest, given all the chances they had in the second half. And I think that speaks to the sort of lack of cohesion that was present in that Norwich side. And another game where Norwich have ultimately looked unconvincing by the 90-minute mark. Next then to Stoke 0, Coventry 2. Bit of a weird game this one. Stoke looking like the team in the ascendancy in the first half and the team more likely to go on and win this game. Plenty of the ball in and around Coventry's half, albeit nothing created that was all too clear-cut, but seemed like they were going in the right direction. Maybe had a similar feel to that Rotherham game last time out, where it was Stoke in the ascendancy for a lot of that game, but ultimately to no avail. And then in the second half, couple of tweaks, and as soon as Coventry got those couple of goals, Stoke just really lost their way in that second half. Have to admit, 2 real quality moments from Coventry, who didn't look all too lively in that first 45 minutes. Beautiful through ball from Gustavo Hamer for that first goal, and then the second one, it's Hamer himself with the twinkle toes in the box, and then the finish to go ahead and match. And those 2 moments of quality ultimately deciding this one for Coventry against the Stoke side, who at times looked to have played some decent stuff, but once again just toothless up front. Next then to Sunderland 2, Burnley 4, a game that had almost everything. It was a perfect first half for Sunderland. They had kept Burnley at bay, scored 2 good goals, Diallo and Neil with the first half strikes, and then in the second half Burnley were able to just completely flip the script. Now, so far this season we've not seen all too many occasions of Burnley being pushed into an uncomfortable situation, you know, especially in this sort of scenario where they're 2 goals down. The majority of the time we see Burnley as the side who take the lead, and sometimes they can be a little bit guilty of sort of not killing it off from that point onwards. But the second half performance was unbelievably clinical from that Burnley side, and some quality goals scored along the way, it has to be said. Teller, Benson, Zawori and Brownhill with the goals for Burnley in this one. Sunderland fans will rue the second half collapse, but credit to Burnley for coming out with that intensity they showed in the second half. And I have to admit it, I know they're not top of the league at the moment, but I do think that Burnley are the best side in the Championship right now. The unbeaten run that they're currently on speaks for itself. The consistency they show week in, week out. And for me, I think they are the team to beat this season. After that, to the South Wales derby, Swansea 2, Cardiff 0. I think the vast majority of us had Swansea winning this game, and in the end they went on to show their quality. Bit of a weird one, if I'm being honest, in terms of all the decisions throughout this game. Obviously, the game-changing moment coming just 7 minutes in when Callum Robinson has shown a straight red card. Now, I don't know if this is going to be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but I didn't think it was a straight red. Don't get me wrong, it was stupid from Robinson, you know, in a derby with this much tension, to do something like, you know, throw the ball at the opposition's face when you're 7 minutes into a South Wales derby is absolutely brain dead. But with that being said, I don't know if that goes down as violent conduct for me, just throwing the ball in someone's face. You know, he gets a shove in the back from Cabango to begin with, and I mean, I wouldn't have, you know, grumbled all too much if that's a yellow card for Robinson and then the game's allowed to move on from that point. But he leaves the referee with the decision to make, and from that point onwards you can see why, you know, that's on Robinson. The other strange decision in this game was the fact that Swansea weren't given a penalty for quite possibly the most blatant handball we've seen all season, but ultimately that wouldn't matter, as it was Swansea who had the quality to go on and see off this Cardiff side. Cooper with a tremendous finish, it has to be said, for 1-0, and then Grimes with a perfectly weighted through ball into Obafemi for that second. And this one could have got uglier for Cardiff, if we're being completely honest, but it was Swansea who were in total ascendancy for this one. Obviously being down to 10 men didn't help things for Cardiff, but 83% possession, 13 shots from Swansea to the 3 of Cardiff. Only 1 attempt on target in the end for Cardiff, and just a miserable afternoon, all things considered. But for Swansea, yeah, good stuff all round, 4th in the Championship. And then to round off the video for today, we had Watford beating Luton by 4-0. This was a weekend where the home sides came out on top in the local derbies, and Watford absolutely ran riot in this game. Now, I don't want to go too much in on Luton because up until this point they had been on a really good run. I was backing them to go on and win this game given how unpredictable Watford have been, but Watford, when they turn up, absolutely have probably the best attacking quality in the Championship, and it's up to Slaven Bilic now to go ahead and regularly get that out of them, get that consistency within this side, because so far under Bilic there has been absolutely no in between. Watford have either been absolutely amazing or absolutely awful, and thankfully for their fans on Derby Day, it was them who were well on top for this one. Started the scoring after just 3 minutes, Davis with a bit of an inventive flick really, the ball pulled back across, and then that sort of set the tone from there. Troost Ekong with the second. I know he only got 1 goal in the end, but João Pedro looked absolutely unplayable for this game. The runs he was making, how he was just breezing past people, no one in that Luton squad could contain him. He got the 3rd before Sarr added the 4th, and then I suppose Luton's afternoon was summed up by that red card later on when the tempers had obviously boiled over a little bit. But yeah, no complaints from this one. Watford by far and away the better side, but can they produce that sort of performance on a regular basis? Because if they can, I mean, they're a shoo-in for at least the top 6. However though guys, those were all the matches that took place in the Championship over the course of this weekend. I would like to get your thoughts on all of them in the comments down below, whether you went to a match, any talking points that you'd like to pick up on, let me know down below. But before we wrap up today's video, we do have a couple of matches in midweek to go ahead and preview. It is a couple of interesting games that we've got coming up in midweek. We've got Coventry going up against Rotherham. Obviously, we've seen Rotherham on the road like to keep things as tight as they can, and Coventry haven't been amazingly flush with goals so far this season, but they showed they had that clinical edge against Stoke, and I just think that the home side may take it in this one as well. Wasn't Rotherham's best performance over the weekend, shipping 4 goals against Hull, and how many chances they actually gave up in that game as well. Prediction for that one, I'm going 2-0 Coventry, a result which would see them climb out of the bottom 3. Next up then to Burnley up against Norwich. Norwich, what are we going to see from them in this game? Are we going to see more of what we saw in the first half against Sheffield United, or are we going to see more of that second half performance? I think that Burnley right now, pound for pound, are probably the best team in the division, so it'll be interesting to see how an out-of-form Norwich side stacks up against them at the moment. But for a prediction, I think it has to be Burnley that I'm backing. 2-1 Burnley I'm saying for that game. But guys, there we have it. That will wrap it up for today's episode of the Championship Roundup. Plenty of talking points to go through. Wasn't a fun weekend for me. I'm happy for this one to be over and behind us now. But as always, if you did go on to enjoy, do leave a like and do stick around for some regular Championship content. I'll see you all in the next one.